Hello, I am at the drop-in in our little counseling room that is has murals painted by volunteers with calming seascape or undersea. Rosie is snoring down here at my side. You may occasionally hear that. I apologize. I'm going to walk through this presentation. It's what I'm excited about at the moment. I prepared it for the Austin Nonprofit User Group, but I'm hoping that this content will be useful to many people and reused many times. I blog at mightyforce.org, and I will have many references to it through the presentation. The name comes from wanting to help organizations, particularly nonprofits, be small but have a mighty impact, small but mighty. And it's mostly about using Salesforce and technology to do that. You'll also hear sounds from the drop-in. We're closing and cleaning up, so I'll apologize for that. You can reach me at the email address there. My Twitter handle is @StreetYouth. You can also use @MightyForce. Street Youth Ministry is a nonprofit. I've been running it for 16 years. We've been using Salesforce for 6 years. We're a day center for homeless young adults. We serve every day about 30 people. We provide for necessities as well as our primary product, which is guidance, counseling, and soft skill training so that they can live and get jobs, live in apartments, and return to an education environment of some sort, whether it's on-the-job training, mentoring, or college. So that's what we do. Thanks very much for listening to that. I don't know about you, but I have been wondering what's going on in this world, in particular with the explosion of technology tools. And this is only one area, but it's an area that has perplexed me and caused me a lot of stress and worry in the last few years. Marketing technology, or MarTech. There's just an explosion of this. Every time you turn around, there's a new channel and a new way to communicate with people, and people are saying it's needed and you got to do it, and it's just overwhelming. Even in the nonprofit space, we talk about needing to transform the organization. We've got to connect donors with impact and manage programs and capture client data and manage donors. And it's a social enterprise with all these channels and all these ways of interacting and providing information. And then frankly, it's just overwhelming. I don't know how to keep up with it all. Even within the Salesforce ecostructure, it's just exploding. It's crazy. Salesforce has been on a buying spree for years now. This slide captures things they bought just in 2 years ending 2017. 2018 was an even bigger year. They bought MuleSoft, Rebel, Datorama, more. And in 2019, looks like it's going to be tumultuous too. They have announced plans to buy Tableau. They bought Map Anything. So many things, and they even bought Salesforce.org. Salesforce.com has purchased the foundation Salesforce.org. In the conference call where they announced it, it was mentioned that this was believed to be a money-making decision. They believe that nonprofits represent a significant profit opportunity. The Salesforce.org announcement has not dealt with that. It has said that they will continue. They remain committed to the Power of 10 license grant and committed to the open source platforms that have been developed. And that's really all they've said. I'm hoping that I can trust that at its word, and that they will continue perhaps to make even available more parts of the Salesforce ecostructure, because we don't really have, Power of 10 is really about sales platform and service platform grants, and not any part of any other grants. There's no marketing cloud, Pardot, AI, knowledge is not included. There's plenty of parts, MuleSoft is not included. There's plenty of parts of the platform that aren't included in the Power of 10 grant. I'm hoping that by buying back Salesforce.org, it will get better. Salesforce.org, in my opinion, was really a reseller of Salesforce, and I'm hoping the deal can get better now, frankly. But Salesforce has been on this buying spree, and it's simply overwhelming to try to keep up with. So, narrowing down a little more, even what's going on with the nonprofit success fact. There have been a lot of changes in the last 2 years. We have lots of new products that aren't included. It's fractured off. There's the educational environment has its own nonprofit sector. The student advising has its own nonprofit sector. Open source software, NPSP has continued to evolve. Volunteers for Salesforce is now part of the Salesforce system again. So anyway, lots of things are happening here. We now have the NPSP Data Importer. We have Levels and Engagement Plans. We have Batch Gift Entry. We have customized rollup engines. We have lots of automatic credits and an improved credit system. So if you haven't been keeping up, you are probably behind. And frankly, it's just overwhelming. I'm not here to train you how to enable these new features, but I do want to explain and remind us all how it works because there has been a lot of change. If you are a brand new customer, your Salesforce org comes with all the features enabled when you get it. And from that point forward, you have to do things to keep up. Your code is updated every 2 weeks, but new code that comes to you once you're established comes turned off, if you want to call it that, or features are disabled. Permission sets for objects and new fields are turned off, even for admins by default. Any feature that has a checkbox to disable it comes with the feature disabled once you're an established customer. So your code, your features look mostly the same to you and to your admins. So unless you've turned on Levels and Engagement Plan, you know nothing about it. Unless you've turned on Batch Gift Entry, you know nothing about it. Unless you turn on the Custom Rollup Engine, you know nothing about it. Unless you turn on auto credits and more, you know nothing about it. So how do you enable features? I've given you a link to the Power of Us Hub feature article that tells you how to do that. How do you know what you're even missing? Well, there are release announcements, and you subscribe to the Power of Us Hub group, so you get those release announcements, but you have to read them. If you're guilty of not reading them, then you should go to the data dictionary, figure out the date that you were sort of last current, and by research, there's no easy way to do this, by research, figure out what the release number was for that date, and then all release numbers that are bigger than that will be listed in the data dictionary, and the corresponding fields or objects that have been added will be visible to you, and you can kind of start sleuthing out what you may have missed. So it's not easy, but you definitely can catch up, and you definitely should, because these features are great. All right. So when I'm asked to talk, I decide what I want to talk on based on what's excited me lately. And when I was asked to talk this time, this idea, all of these ideas that I've mentioned in these slides have been bugging me. The world is throwing a lot of stuff at us, and it doesn't seem to fit into what I understand. And I came across this architecture by Suchin Rengan in a YouTube that was released from Trailhead DX this year. I don't know how long he's been drawing this architecture. I don't know how long it took to evolve this. I did confirm with him that he is the creator of this diagram. I'm sure it's derived from many things in the past. There are lots of things I recognize here, but I really appreciate and got excited about this architecture. To me, this architecture gives me the ability to move into this future in a way that I did not feel like I had until I grasped what he was teaching with this architecture. So if you'd like to watch the architectural presentation that he did, there's the link to it on YouTube. So what we're going to do is actually walk through this and talk about how NPSP provides tools at various levels in this and how other things fit in. So here we go. This architecture starts at the bottom with the data layer. And the data layer of NPSP are things you're probably familiar with. We have the CRM data layer, contact, which, of course, is standard. Household, which is customized by NPSP. Organizations, which is it's at least a record type customization of organizations. Affiliations and relationships, which are custom objects in NPSP. That's kind of the CRM data layer. It's our source of truth when it comes to people and how they're related to organizations and how they're related to each other. Then there's transactional stuff. NPSP customizes the opportunities. Some of us call them donations. It adds a custom object called payments. It adds a custom object called volunteer hours. These are our transactions, our source of truth when it comes to who gave us money, who gave us stuff, who gave us their time. Then we have some other core source of truth databases that are part of Salesforce: cases, campaign memberships. All of these need to be captured and need to be used, but we need to know they're true. In addition to and these make up the data layer. In addition to that, there's more. We can enrich our CRM with other sources of data, which we either point to or add into Salesforce. Billing data systems can be added. There are other sources of database truth out there. Emails represents a transactional database, and we can either synchronize it with Salesforce using maybe Lightning for Gmail sync or Lightning for Outlook sync, or we can use carefully Einstein activity capture. I have really bad experience with that. You feel free to ask me about that. I cannot trust it any longer, but you may have varying results. Many of us have call databases of who has called our number. We may have text databases. We may have social media databases. We may have analytics or other web interaction page visit databases. We may have forms and survey databases. We may have apps that we offer our constituents that create databases. All of these there are transaction databases representing each of these, and we have lots of choices about what to do with it. And we can bring them inside Salesforce with an integration. We can manually import them occasionally, either selectively or partially, with some, monthly or quarterly or weekly. They can live outside Salesforce, and we can connect them with Salesforce Connect as an external object. We can make them available to our staff, and they can be manually checked when they need it to be. Or we can decide to ignore the database. It's not important, but they do exist. So we have this source of data at the data layer, and we have tasks to do to them. We must acquire them. That may look like data entry. It may look like import. It may look like integration or syncing. Once it's inside of Salesforce or available to Salesforce, we need to normalize it. Technically, we could normalize it even if it's an external database. That may mean making phone number format changes and verifying it, or finding out what capability the phone numbers are. As we make more use of channels, this becomes more and more important. We may want to verify the email format is correct and validate it. And both of these, phone numbers and emails, we have many of them for individuals, for privacy reasons and security reasons, and just good constituent management. We need to connect multiple phone numbers and emails to one person. And often we can analyze the email format and say, well, this is obviously a business email, or this is obviously an educational email. We can assume certain ones are personal. And having analyzed the domain of the email, we can put it in the right place. With phone numbers, we can use APIs or manual searches and determine what type of phone number it is. Is it a landline or is it a mobile phone number capable of texting? Postal addresses can be verified, renormalized. Missing key data can be identified either at entry time or corrected by task later. So we have a lot of normalization to do. We may need to deduplicate. It's bad news to have a bunch of contacts representing the same person, and we may need to connect those. For security reasons, it's bad to have external databases and internal databases not pointing to the same thing, and so we may want to use the new person capability in order to just tie together that all of these records represent the same person, and that person probably has the right to ask us to forget it or ask us not to share it. And finally, there is a archival process for source data tests. At some point, we consider data no longer useful. At 1 gigabyte of data, I was already looking at needing to archive data last year in my small organization. Now with 10 gigabytes, most Power of 10 grantees have 10 gigabytes. I don't need to worry about archiving for another 5 years, but it's still going to happen, right? We are going to grow enough that we have to do it, probably in about 5 years. So you have to figure out how to archive. So all of these things are things we need to do. Let's talk about how NPSP and Salesforce works. With acquisition, I would highly encourage you to use quick actions and train your staff that when they're adding a new contact, they use the right form. We have a new donor form and a new volunteer form and a new client form. You may find that you need multiple of these for different business unit purposes. And what I'm doing is I'm prioritizing the field placement near the top for things that are important, because users have a tendency to go down the page and fill out the stuff at the top first, and then eventually they go, you know what, I can hit save now. And make required the things that are required. So if it's a donor, I may make certain things required that aren't required for a client, or vice versa. So quick actions are one way of helping to normalize. Gift entry is a tool from NPSP that helps us normalize donation entry. It has built-in search before add features so that we don't duplicate. It's keyboard friendly, so it's fast. And it creates not only the records we need, but a record of how it got in there. So batch gift entry is a record that you can report on all by itself, so that if you're wondering, how do we get this, or how well did we do, you can actually report just on the batch gifts. We will be producing a video on how to set it up. The shortest video I'm aware of is about an hour, provided by Salesforce.org when they introduced this feature. More features are coming to batch gift entry. GAUs and credits will be supported soon. Templating of gift data. You can already copy a batch gift setup, but pretty soon you'll be able to say, once a month we get all this stack of checks from our recurring donors. We can just copy that whole thing, including the gift line entries, and then change what data we need and save it. So that's what's going on in the batch gift entry. I do want to point out that batch data entry is a legacy product also present in your NPSP org. It is not being updated. They've announced that. It has not been retired yet, but it will be retired at some point in the future and not available anymore to new orgs. So, plan to transition to gift entry if you have not. You will like it a lot better. Other normalizations you can do. You can build process builders to change Texas to TX, to change blank state with Austin to Texas, or you can go whole hog and address validate with some of the built-in NPSP validation providers. SmartyStreets is what I use. Google is available. There are a couple others, or you can build your own mapping. Change phone numbers to the preferred format is something you can do. You can do this with Process Builder. I'm partway through implementing dumping every new phone number to a spreadsheet and using Zapier to call an API from Twilio that normalizes the phone number and tells me what type it is, so that I can then put it in the proper field. Quick actions to collect information required. We've already talked about. You can also do hidden fields in quick actions. So if a user clicks new donor to enter in a contact, we can automatically set the lead source as donor. Reports that detect missing data, inconsistent data, wrong data, these need to be something you do, and they need to be used. A wall of zero is something you need. Get one and clean your house regularly. There's a how-to video from Texas Dreamin' about how to do this. on mightyforce.org. You can do it for yourself, and you need to. You can do it for business units, and you should. You should schedule them so they show up in the appropriate person's inbox, and you should encourage them and shame them if needed into clearing up the data items that are shown up on your wall of zero. I'm going to stop there. All right, so that's system of record. And NPSP does a really good job of giving us a good system of record for standard things, and we can easily extend Salesforce to give us a good system of record for many other things. Next comes system of aggregation, and I personally think this should be the second layer, a separate layer, rather than co-resident with the first layer. Doesn't matter. I just think there are reasons for there to be fairly strong separation of aggregation from system of record in this case. However, it's not important beyond that, probably. So what do we mean? What we mean is when we look at a contact or a household or a person, we need to have a view of how they are performing as a donor, how they are interacting as a client, how they are performing as a volunteer, how they are performing as an in-kind viewer. And I don't really mean performing like do we like them or not. I mean, what is their activity in aggregate based on the transaction data? So let's dive into that. NPSP provides a ton of great aggregation information for us. Account and households have roll-ups. Those are statistics about when did they give first, when did they give last, how much did they give in this year, last year, 2 years ago, how much have they given total, how many times have they given total. There's at least 13 numbers on the account and household. Likewise, contacts can be given hard credit numbers, that same kind of numbers. Likewise, contacts can be given soft credit numbers, same kind of numbers. There are also member numbers for households and contacts. And it's all based around the household account or the organizational account and giving opportunity contact roles to each of the donations. So it's all very standard, allowing us to capture the transaction properly and then separately create this aggregation layer. It's very good. The NPSP Custom Rollup Engine took it to a new level. It was introduced late last year. If you haven't turned it on, you should make plans to turn it on, in my opinion. But if you don't need it, you don't have to hurry to it. I have not turned it on in my production, but it's just one checkbox, and it's intended to get you exactly the same numbers for all umpty-yacht supported rollups. I said 68 here. I read somewhere that it may be even as high as 80. You also get the first gift amount, which many people have wanted and is not provided by NPSP. Old rollups, but in the custom engine, it is provided. If you need to do things like donor advised funds separately, if you need to do in-kind donations separately, these are things you can easily do with the custom rollup engine. I am not going to provide how to do it. There's resources on how to do it in the hub. Level engine is another tool provided in NPSP to help us with aggregation. Levels assigns a category to a contact or account every night based on some numbers. You can, for example, you can decide bronze, silver, and platinum is something we assign to household accounts every night based on giving level this year. And it will do that, and away it goes. One cool thing about it is you can give your business units permission to do this rather than requiring the admin to be involved when these things are assigned. Another cool thing is it's an actual hard field value, so you can trigger things based on it rather than having restrictions on it because it's a formula field. Another good thing about it is you can record the history of it when NPSP changes the category. For example, if a donor was bronze but now is silver, you can specify a field where bronze is recorded as the old value and silver is the new. So again, you have some ability to control things with triggers in that way that you won't have if you're just doing it as a formula field, or if you're just relying on the former value as a automation tool. It runs nightly, so you can change this and redo it all. So that's all very nice. The Levels engine is very powerful and can be used for way more than just donations. I have plans to use it for volunteers. I have plans to use it for subscriber. I have plans to use it for clients. Other useful ways to do aggregation. DLRS, Declarative Lookup Rollup Summary Tool, is free. It's not on the App Exchange. It's from a very trusted source, Andy Fawcett. The link is right there. It allows you to do lots of rollups from lookup data rather than requiring the rollup be part of a master detail relationship. Mass Action Scheduler is another tool that is very good at this. It's from a MVP Doug Ayers, very trusted. There's the link. It's also not on the App Exchange. Mass Action Scheduler allows you to schedule tasks to run, and will take a set of objects defined by either a list view or a report and run on all of them either, and this is mind-blowing, either a quick action, a flow, a process builder, or Apex. So you can pretty much declaratively take a list of objects and do something to it. And by the way, you can also you can manually run things. So I often actually use this to update things. My most common use scenario for this on a day-to-day basis as an admin is we decide on a new automation and we put the process builder in place, but now you have to go make your database, all the existing records have to be updated for whatever it is you did. I often manually cause Mass Action Scheduler to run this very same process builder on all the appropriate records. So these are ways to get aggregation into your database. All right, so our NPSP is really serving well our system of record and our aggregation. So now we come to the integration layer, and I'm not going to talk a ton about the integration level. This is all about orchestration and coordination. This is your business process. This is your fulfillment process. This is your service delivery process. This is how you keep things synchronized. This is how you convert from they placed an order to this is all the fulfillment of it. This is how you convert from this is a lead and now they're a contact and doing certain things. NPSP provides receipt generation in this space for a single donation. There is still no NPSP provided summary receipt or itemized receipt for a period of time. For that, I personally use Apsona document merge. This is NPSP converting from a commitment to do a recurring donation into individual donations and keeping that updated. This is NPSP converting from our recurring need for volunteers on a certain shift to individual shifts. This is NPSP or Volunteers for Salesforce going from a commitment to volunteer on a certain basis to individual signups. All of that happens and is provided. This is us using Service Cloud to build and process cases. So that's what the integration layer is all about, and we have lots of this in every nonprofit. But that's really all I'm going to talk about it because it's pretty well documented and pretty well exists. So then we come to the intelligence layer, and for me, this is the most exciting. This is the most eye-opening layer. I don't have any of this in my database right now, and it's actually why I'm struggling. I'm trying to create the layers above it without creating the intelligence layer, and this has been a mistake for me. And so I am really excited to talk about this layer. So even though we call this intelligence layer, AI is absolutely not required for this. Most nonprofits are doing this manually right now, but it's all about using our aggregation layer to be smart. This layer is probably implicit in many of your processes. That was the case for me. And like I said, making it explicit is the most eye-opening thing that I'm excited about right now. Many of us has simplified this by embedding in our CRM, meaning I have an intelligence layer field or two on my contact or my account, but I haven't made it a separate object yet. And that's okay, but there are limitations in that. You know, specifically, you can't query the history of your intelligence layer about an account or a contact. There can't be more than one of them at any given time, for example. Many tools implicitly are providing this data somewhere, but I think you need to bring it into Salesforce and make it reportable and explicit. But that's really up to you. All right, so aggregation layer, we have it. What do we do with it in the intelligence layer? First of all, we need to present it to our users on the screen. We need to be able to analyze it in reports and dashboards. And then we need to make it explicit in terms of what we're trying to get our constituents to do. Call that personalization, call that journeys, call it whatever you want, but the intelligent layer needs to include some designation about what that is. So let's take a look at that. First, we can aggregate and show our intelligence on a Lightning record page. How do we do that? We use components to show information from aggregation, but most importantly, we set the component visibility to be conditional on the intelligence that we have, the aggregation that we have. So on a account or contact page, we may want to show aggregate donor information, but that should only be visible if they're a donor. And so we use our aggregation layer information, total number of gifts to be greater than 0, as the condition of showing anything at all. And so here I have a graph of annual donations for the account, but it's only going to be shown if, in fact, the total number of gifts is greater than 0. Here I have a component on a Lightning page that shows donor information on the contact level, but I'm only going to show this if total number of gifts is greater than 0, and I have used a Lightning component called the related record to organize that in a way that makes sense for this particular instance. So related record, the lookup field is set to this record rather than some other field. And I have defined a quick action that shows the information that I want to show on the page in the order I want to show it. And it's only visible if they're a donor. And I have chosen to put it in a collapsible component so that I can get rid of it if that's not what I'm focused on. All of that may sound like a lot, and so there is a video on how to do this on mightyforce.org. It was presented at Texas Streaming. A quote from someone there, it's a game changer now that I've learned how to do this. So, and you can make different components visible based on the user profiles, the app, the data on the record. It is, in fact, a game changer. So learn how to do this and you will be very happy in presenting your aggregate data as part of the intelligence layer. All right, now we have to learn how to report on the aggregation layer in order to guide our intelligence layer also. To do this well, you have to master your core data and your aggregation data fields. You, as the admin, have to memorize these. They have to be inside your brain. And then you have to master simple reporting and dashboards. I have many lectures on this in my YouTube playlist. I have many videos on this on reporting in mightyforce.org. I am going to go over the next page of information as examples, but there's an endless number of this, and if this is a challenge for you, you need to practice. Learn to answer questions with your data model, your aggregation data. What is the lifetime value of the donor? That's the total number, that's the total of gifts. What is the average gift we get from the donors? Well, that's total of gifts divided by number of gifts. What is the span of this donor? Well, that is the last time they gift minus the first time they gave. And if we want that in years, we divide it by 365. What's the period of time between gifts from this donor? Well, the average period is the span, which we just calculated, divided by the number of gifts minus 1. And if we're worried about what would happen if that span is small, for example, if it's 0 or just a few days, we may want to override that value with some number that makes sense to our organization. In my case, I make it 6 months. So if somebody's only given one time, the formula will fail. If they've given only twice, the formula will still fail. If they've given over a period of just a few days, I would rather say that they're a 6-month donor than they're a donor every 3 days. You can read the rest of these, but they're good examples to practice with, and you need to have lots of conversations with your business unit and learn to translate their questions into formulas using your aggregation data model. When they stump you, you need to go away and study. When they regularly ask you questions that cannot be answered with your aggregation data model, it's time to add something. Here are some more, but what I wanted to point out on this is that all of the things that I just gave as examples are things I routinely use, and I have taught using a package that I call the automatic donor statistics. And there's a blog explaining it, and I have documented exactly the formula fields that I have added. And as of this release in Salesforce, you no longer have to add them as formula fields. Most of them you can actually capture using a report formula, and you don't even have to add it as a formula field anymore if you don't want to. Learn to filter with your data model. This is the other thing you must do in order to reasonably report your aggregate layer at the intelligence layer. You need to learn how to filter your data so that you can sum and give intelligence layer reports and dashboards of only the relevant records. And I'm not going to go through this again in this presentation, but these are things you need to practice and learn. You need to learn the skill of bucketing in reporting. That's so that you can condense the data in such a way that strategy can emerge at the intelligence layer. For example, oftentimes you'll be wondering, how many new donors did we retain? Well, you can translate that into they've given 3 times or more if that's your business practice to consider somebody who gives 3 times more a retained donor. And they're not retained yet or at all if they've given once or twice. You can put that into a bucket field, yes, they're retained, or no, they're not. And then you can add it to a report or a dashboard, and it's more useful information than the number of times someone is given. You can combine information on reports and dashboards in such a way that strategy or intelligence begins to be visible. Here is a graph that I hate because of the terrible information it gives me, and yet it guides me very well. I call it the lapsed donor giving power. This graph gets bigger as a year goes by, and then it resets. For example, in 2019, it shows that we have about $45,000 worth of giving power that has lapsed. Now, what does that mean? Lapsed means there's an account that has had a giving pattern that has stopped giving. So they gave every month and they stopped, or they gave twice a year and they stopped, or they gave once a year and they stopped, or they gave one time and 6 months has gone by, so they stopped. That's lapsed. Now, it's not permanent. I can do something about it and change the shape of this graph, but when it goes up to $45,000, already this year, it means, oh my goodness, I need to do something. So I have to first know what the average giving power is, and then I need to graph it against their last gift date. And then let the graph be cumulative, and I have these horrible charts that scare the heck out of me and cause me to move into action. And The recent years are pretty high, and if I do my job well, and the donors are cooperative, of course, we can recover that, and it goes away because they're no longer lapsed donor power. But you have to learn how to do this if you're going to help expose the aggregation layer at the intelligence level as strategy or potential strategy. Additional intelligent layer resources. Next best action is a new feature from Salesforce. It's pay as you go, so it's available to everyone at an affordable cost, at least until you use lots of it. I can't wait to explore this, but I have not yet done it. It's declarative. Einstein Sales is affordable for nonprofits and might easily predict some intelligence. I have yet to try it, but definitely there are nonprofits out there using Einstein to predict things that are useful. You have to have a lot of data. You can check that with your Einstein Readiness Assessor in Sales Setup. All right, I am going to stop here, and we're going to come back and talk about the engagement and experience layer later. But I'm going to stop here for a break. Thanks very much.